Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Hello, this is Romuald Simeone, and this is video number 7 of the Love Letters from the Father. The book is the Love Letters from Your Father, the Gospel of John. And we're in chapter 3. We just said that this was the first lesson of the apostles, the 12, seeing Jesus coming into the temple and cleansing the temple. The first thing you do is clear the swamp. The temple is a place, a holy place. Restore the temple. Make the temple the place of God where you can pray, where you don't have to listen to animals and money exchangers. And Jesus came in. He didn't come in just to say, well, look, high priest and Jews and leaders and elders, proclaim me, I'm here, I'm the Messiah. He came to do a job. He came to be the Messiah. And he knew their attitudes. He saw their attitudes. They were not ready for Messiah. They were not prepared, as John the Baptist had said. Prepare the way of the Lord. These were unprepared people, the elders. They were negotiating. They were making profit on the ordinary people, on the Jews who came for the Seder, for the high holy days. They had to exchange. They came from all different places. They had all different kinds of money. They had all gold and silver coins from different nations. They had to change it into Jewish shekels at a high price. The people had to bring the animals. They brought their firstborn and their special sheep to be slaughtered for the high holy day, the symbol of the Lamb of God, to return to God, the symbol of Isaac, who was being sacrificed by Abraham on the rock of the Holy of Holies. No. Here comes Jesus. What does he do? He knows the situation. He sees the situation. He knows the hearts of men. He knows the hearts of those who came to pray and to worship God and to pray for Messiah to come. He takes halters and ropes that tied the beasts and whips the people. He whips those who are doing the wrong thing. He whips at the animals to get them out, to release them. They're not worthy of coming to God, to be offered to God. But you know, what lesson did the 12 learn there? First of all, no good deed will be unrewarded by the Father in heaven, who sees the reality of what you're doing. But also, no good deed will be attacked by those that compromise God's law, that use human ends to do divine things, to make profit out of the temple, to make unclean the temple of God. So, that's the lesson they learned. But were they shocked? Were they afraid? Jesus wasn't afraid. They saw two things. The security guard didn't come. The temple police, who were actually like soldiers, the ones that later also came to and 3 years later came to attack Jesus and bring him in chains to his death. They stood down. The police, the soldiers stood down. They were relieved. Here's the good thing that happened. They were relieved. They couldn't tear away those people who were bargaining and making this a marketplace of the temple. They would lose their jobs. They would be condemned. They would be thrown out. But Jesus came and did it. I think they were relieved. They had seen for years the good Jews, the good Levites. They had seen for years that the people, what was being done to the people, how the people were being scammed and couldn't pray. They couldn't pay with all this chaos in the colonnade of the sections for the women. And the women and the Jews that were there from the diaspora who were looking for Messiah, they applauded. They saw the first act of Messiah. They didn't know he was Messiah yet. It took 3 years before Palm Sunday when they actually began to understand that Jesus was Messiah and proclaimed him Son of David. They didn't really know who he was, but he was and proclaimed who he was and identified himself. And so he left the temple unscathed with his disciples, with the 12. They didn't have to run away. They just left. And guess what happened? Jesus was making his first convert. There came to him, searching for him, later. Someone came by night, by the nighttime, and he asked to speak to Jesus, to understand him, to find out who he was. He was impressed. And who was he? One of the highest elders, a member of the Sanhedrin, Nicodemus, chapter 3, John's Gospel. He came by night. Why would he come by night? Well, he was cautious. He was an open disciple and said, "You're the Messiah." But he wanted to know who Jesus was. Who are you, Lord? Who are you? I didn't say, Lord, who are you? Are you a zealot? Are you an activist? I could see you're not political. You're not catering. You're not so careful that you could offend people who are doing the wrong thing. You acted as a Messiah would. So, here is Nicodemus. He comes by night. He's not converted. We see a person of faith sees through the eyes of Jesus. He didn't come to that stage yet. He was just blinking. He was just searching. Many Christians, many Catholics are always searching. They're Christians and call themselves Christians for so many years. And when a person is an evangelist, he's going out and saying, we're saying who you're going out to. Who are you going out to? You're going to convert Catholics to be Christian? Are you going out to convert? You're converting sinners, we know that. You're going out to convert people who say, I'm just as good as the other guy. No, I'm not bad. If you did the personality test on them, they say, I get along with everybody. I'm fine. Other people may be wrong, but I get along with them. I got a lot of friends. We're not so sure if you're a friend of Jesus in his image. Yes. You can go to church just as the money changers were in the temple. The elders were in the temple. The priests, the Sadducees were in the temple. The Pharisees were in the temple. But who came to pray? Who came with transparency in their heart to know to whom they were speaking, that God already knew who they were? Who came as his children? Who came to avoid the angel of death? So, this is the first stage. So the first stage of Jesus was successful. It was trying. It was a sacrifice. When you go out to witness, are you always successful? When you reach out, who are you? Do you have the eyes and faith of Jesus? And are you willing to give that to them and not worry about what they see in you? And if you are in the image of Jesus, that's what they will see. The first thing that Nicodemus said to Jesus was, really, who are you? Who are you? And with that first question, when persons ask someone who knows a question, the person who knows, the teacher, knows the character of the one who's asking by the question, knows what your emptiness is, knows what your search is, and knows the answer. Yes, Jesus already knew who Nicodemus was, but he's asking Jesus, who are you? And he says, Nicodemus, let me talk to you. Let's have a dialogue. Debate? A dialogue? A imposition? What is it? He questions. He wants to know why Jesus came to the temple, why he did what he did, why the reaction was of the people who seemed to be there to pray were so happy, why he had disciples. All things were racing through his mind as he asked the questions. But Jesus turns it on him. Nicodemus, let's go back to the origin. Who are you in your birth? Who gave you birth? Oh, my mother. No. The spiritual man, you know the law, you know the Torah, you know the Ten Commandments. God gave you birth. Who is your father? God is your father. Who do you image? Here you are, a doctor of the law. You are the judge of the attitudes, of the spiritual life, of the Jews. Your word could go out all over the whole world to correct people. What are you correcting? Correcting them if they're the image of their mothers or fathers? Their physical fathers? No. But are they the image of God, your Father? What must I do? Jesus repeats the very same thing that John the Baptist was preaching. Be reborn. As a human being, as a person immersed in the 7 capital sins, immersed in saying you're doing good in that temple and acting in an evil way, a way contrary to the very nature of that temple. He doesn't say it in just a finger-pointing way. He says it with compassion as a fellow teacher. But notice that the first thing that happens is that it's the Sanhedrin judge who becomes the people. And Jesus is in his position as teacher. So, the first thing you have to do to connect to the Lord is to listen. And here he's listening. He's listening in the dark. He doesn't have the eyes of Jesus. We're not so sure. He kind of develops one eye at least, but at least he's blinking. He's trying to see. Looking at Jesus. Lord, his heart is turning, and he begins to listen. And throughout this chapter 3, Jesus is teaching him who he is, what the reality is, and what has to be done. So there, he has made contact. Make connection, you have to be contact. You have to be like a child, willing to learn. And the Sanhedrin master, Nicodemus, is now a child, listening to Jesus, opening his heart, listening with a heart, not an ear, but with a heart. Master, teach me. That's what he turns to say. And that's what we do. We don't teach Jesus. We don't teach about Jesus. We learn from him and repeat what he does. Note that after this, and in exchange with Jesus and Nicodemus, just go ahead, and Jesus makes a second convert, because Nicodemus goes to another member of the Sanhedrin, and that's Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph of Arimathea doesn't appear very much in the Gospels, but note what happens in 3 years when both of their eyes are opened, when they become faithful followers of Jesus Christ and know that he is the Christ, the Messiah. They're there at the cross. Those two are at the cross. The founding fathers of the Christian faith. And during the time of his work for the 3 years, they are unblinded gradually, faithfully, and when Jesus is laid in the tomb, it is the very burial place of Joseph of Arimathea himself. When we look at the content of what Jesus is saying to Nicodemus, and what Nicodemus keeps referring to in this chapter of John's Gospel, you'll see the same theme going through, all the way through. And that is, Jesus is talking about the plan for man, the plan for the human race, not just for Nicodemus, for the world, what he's going to be saying throughout the gospel, the good news itself. That to be reborn, to be reborn. We could say, well, this is what he's saying is not so much the don't confuse it. The baptism of water, of going into the Jericho and to going to the water and being dipped into the water by John the Baptist, but you start with the baptism of desire. Lord, turn me into what I am not now, what I think I am, what I say I am, but what I am not. Because Jesus sees with different eyes than we do. We think everything is fine. Everything is fine. How are you today? I'm fine. Oh yeah. What are you? Well, what's your title? I'm the Sanhedrin, the minister of the International Jewish Senate, the wise men who make sure that the Torah is followed. But it wasn't being followed at the temple, and you were there, Nicodemus. You were there for years. You're going back now. So, to repent. You know what repent means? We have to get down and crawl. We have to start over again. How do you be reborn? Go back to your creation. God made you. He made you immortal. He made you virtuous. He made you obedient. He made you his child. Something happened. Disaster came. Satan influences. The human element now. Man becomes a rebel. Man knows more than God. Oh, we can't follow God's law. We have the answers. We have the answers. Oh, they don't work. Well, we'll try to look for another one. They work well enough. We try to make people happy. Yeah, for this world. Making people happy for this world. Of course. They wouldn't come and pay you a fee. If you're a counselor, if you're a person who is giving advice, they don't pay you back with obedience because you're the father or mother. You're just trying to make people happy. Yes. Are you nurturing their souls? Mother came to us one time in church, greeting for persons in church. You know, now the church has become a meeting hall. And when I was a boy, you were not allowed to talk in church. That was a sin. You had to confess it. I talked in church. Once you come to the church door, focus was completely on the Eucharist, on the temple of God. But now, even right after communion, as soon as Mass is over, people are running out, and they start talking and saying, well, how are you? How are your children? How's the weather and all that, you know? So anyway, I'm talking to someone after Mass, after my meditation, 15 minutes, I was always taught, after communion, talk to Jesus. Listen to him for 15 minutes while he's in you in the Eucharist. But after that, person's loitering and said, say a kind word, a greeting, peace be with you, and things. How's it going with you? Your children now? Oh, well, they don't go to church. They're not in church. Oh, but they're good kids. They're good kids. They're wonderful kids. How are they good? They're good by not going to church, by not receiving communion, by not confessing their sins. But they're good kids. Well, they don't cause us any trouble. Is that the goal? Sometimes what somebody has to be stirred up. There has to be a little trouble. I think Jesus made a little trouble in that temple. But I tell you one thing, after he was there, it was quiet enough and people could concentrate enough to pray to God and connect to him again. So, we were deformed by the power of Satan. We were deformed by the sin of Adam. All the prophets, all the teachings of God, all the 10 Commandments are to reform us. Not doing too good a job sometimes. So Jesus himself comes. The Son of God comes and said, you're dust. That's what we all are. You can have all kind of fancy titles. The Sanhedrin, the judges of the Jewish world, the Senate, the Pharisees, the ones who are separated, the perfect ones, who are the public police to make sure everybody follows the rituals, everybody follows every little rule, multiplied rules, hundreds of rules. They try to count them sometimes when you read the books. They count them 613 rules. Well, maybe it's more than that. They're making rules every single day. You didn't do it right. Your apostles didn't do it right. They didn't wash their hands. And if you wash your hands, you had to wash them all the way to your elbows. You're not purified. But the temple was not purified until this day. So, Jesus says, you're dust. I can remold you. Follow the way of God. That's what he's really telling Nicodemus. That's what he's telling everybody. Whatever title you have, you're the perfect ones. You're the ones who are good enough. You're so good, you can talk about every single thing under the earth. You can connect to your friends. You can connect to everyone around you. And you can talk about ball games. You can talk about your job. But when the person say, how do you pass on Jesus that is in your heart, that you love so much? When you love a person, you want to talk about them. You want to talk about how wonderful they are. Can you pass it on? Yeah, Nicodemus went. He passed it on to Joseph of Arimathea. He was making his first effort. He wasn't game enough to come out into the open and be an open disciple of Jesus and back him up all the time. He did that in 3 years he did it. And then he never looked back. He was a different man. So, that is what was happening. It's called reforming. Reforming. We can use other words to it. We can use the word renewal. Renewal. Well, if you're renewed, and I know this has been going on for a number of years now, and I don't know, I don't think I'm that new. I don't think I'm that new. So to come back to the point, Jesus was victorious in what he was trying to do, as he always is. But another thing that was established, so that the negatives, the anti-Jesus coalition. The ones who were profiting by making the temple not the house of God, but the den of thieves, would never forget this. They became his enemies to the time they could put him on the cross. The anti-Jewish, the anti-Jesus coalition. I say anti-Jewish. That came out spontaneously because they were actually anti-Moses. And Jesus had said to them, if you're a son of Moses, do the works of Moses. If you're the sons of Abraham, do the works of Abraham. I'm telling you to be the sons of God and look at my works and see what I do. You cannot accuse me ever of not doing the works of my Father. So they had all these self-identifying titles, and as much as they hated each other, they joined up against Jesus. The Herodians were the compromisers, half pagan. They're the ones who were the politicians of the time, uniting themselves to the Romans. Like Herod, we got the name from Herod. Herod, who was an Idumean, who went to Rome and was approved by the emperor, by Mark Antony, and then presented to the Senate and then to the emperor to become made the king of Israel, who built then pagan temples at Caesarea Philippi, who built the temple because he wanted the people to recognize him as a Jew. But he killed Jews. He killed the high priest. He drowned the high priest, who was actually the brother of his queen wife. By their fruits you will know them. The Pharisees, the perfect ones, the ritual police. Yeah, there were good ones. There were good ones. There were ones trying honestly to follow the way of the Lord. But they also tried to stone Mary Magdalene. She broke the law. It says it in the rule book. She deserves to be stoned to death. But Jesus writes in the dust, their faults, because the law also said only the innocent accuser can throw the first rock and crush him. And they all left. The eyes of Jesus see into reality. The Sadducees, who were the priest cult of the temple, who did not believe in immortality, did not believe in the existence of angels, did not believe that humans just didn't have a human life, a material life, but had no immortality. These people joined together, and others joined together. So even they convinced the people to say, crucify him, crucify him. We have no king but Caesar. When the law said God was the king. God is the master of the universe. I am the Lord your God. You shall not have strange gods before me, not even you. You are not the God over me. Thy will be done. Teach us to pray, Lord. The apostles asked Jesus. Pray thus. Father of the heavens, thy will be done on earth. So, this is the first teaching of Jesus. First open teaching of him as the Messiah. Repeating and saying nothing new, but then empowering us, giving us insight with his eyes, making us think with his mind, listening with an open heart. This is chapter 3, Love Letters from Your Father. Jesus is not only love letters giving us the good news from the Father, he is the letter. He's the messenger, and he is the message. God bless you. Let's pray for each other.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.